If you're not familiar with Nedra Glover Tawwab, she's a really wonderful author. She has another book a couple of years ago on setting boundaries. And these are just a few quotes from this particular book. Drama-Free, a guide to managing unhealthy family relationships. You cannot change people. Changing you is enough. That is so crucial to happiness in life, and is something I feel like I banged my head against the wall on for so long. It really means so much if we could change people and people could be kinder, more regulated, if they could think the way we do. So many things that would seem like it would make the world better. And yet that's such a truth. We can change ourselves, and that's where our work is. The change happens when we get tired enough to stop our unhealthy behaviors. All of these different gems from the book are what we're working with when it comes to boundaries. We need to somehow keep an open heart and also possibilities. Like in healthy families, people are held accountable and issues are resolved. I didn't grow up in a healthy family. I'm sure most of us didn't. And sometimes we get into a healthier relationship as adults, friendships, romantic relationships, and it seems like it's a hard thing to come to. So that's what we're working with in part. The boundaries are the distance in which I can love you and me simultaneously, from Prentice Hemphill. Just imagining that and how we can get to that. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. We're not giving away ourselves. We're not overextending ourselves. We're mature and settled enough to say no when we need to invite intimacy and authenticity. And this last quote on the page is from Dr. Kay Vout. We need to manage our own anxiety and self-regulation so we can tolerate saying and listening to challenging information. And that's what we can work with. Today, like usual with our inquiry, we're looking into being regulated enough to do the inquiry, working with an example. You don't have to pick a 10 out of 10, although it might be what leaps to mind. And as we do this, we're going to work with coming back into regulation, being aware of your body, your breath. We can get into old patterns and traumatic memories. So we want to stay present in this moment in time. What used to be impossible for us might not be anymore. What used to be overwhelming for us might not be anymore. And we also have to be kind and practical. And what is it that I want to do? What is it that I can do? What are the risks? If I set a boundary with this person, are they going to turn against me? Are they going to get mad? Are they going to go behind my back and try to hurt me with other people? Sometimes we set a boundary and it's not respected. And that often is because someone else has a really dysregulated nervous system. They might feel entitled to get their way and not really care. They're objectifying us or not seeing us. Sometimes that's due to lack of maturity or not good mental health as well. People just don't have the bandwidth at times. Things are overwhelming right now, so maybe they are usually, but not right now. That's another way that we can work with this in a sense of let's keep our hearts open. How can I be honest and notice when I'm not calling something out because I just don't feel like I can handle the conflict? And I don't feel like I can handle being left either. Even so, we recognize the cost it has. I'm willing to set a boundary about. Let's see what comes to mind for you, and we'll work with that. So people in a healthy relationship take responsibility and talk things out rather than acting things out. When I first read that, I just thought, wow, that's not my experience. And I don't think it's ever our experience 100% of the time. And then certainly it can be more of the time. One thing that we can try to do is keep ourselves grounded and stable, because that's more likely then that we're going to have the capacity to act like an adult. And we can try to avoid being caught up in drama or engagements with people who are not acting like adults, whether that's a short-term thing or how they always are. People who aren't emotionally regulated have a harder time with boundaries. We're setting a boundary around a behavior. This gets back to shaming, and shaming a behavior is something that is often healthy. Shaming a person is never healthy. It's a toxic shaming. We feel like we're just hopeless. We're not fit to be part of the human society. And when we make someone else feel that way. So we need to be really careful when we're setting boundaries around behavior that we're not shaming the person. It could be that somebody has a hard time regulating, like we talked about a few weeks ago. They talk all the time. But that's a habit that's going on. It's probably related to some kind of anxiety. And it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It means that they have something going on that makes it hard for us to be with them. And then we might need to set a boundary around that. So how can we do this with an open heart and compassion? And coming back to regulation is the answer to that. How can I be open-hearted and compassionate and remain aware of my humanity and their humanity? When we feel like we're getting dysregulated, we can take a break, but only if we notice. So that's where the somatic mindfulness comes in. If we're mindful of what's happening, then we notice I'm starting to get into a fight response. I'm starting to shut down and back away. So we can take the time when we do a practice like this and really explore the risks without pressuring ourselves. We can have a look and go through some of the responses so that we're more likely to be stable. One of the things Nedra is talking about here is it's not enough to just love someone or feel like they love us. We also need respect, support, trust, boundaries. We need people to be here when it matters, and we need the space to grow and to be accepted that we've changed when we do. So that might be something that you're thinking about a boundary around. I find this is kind of common with siblings or people who've known us for a long time, that they expect that we're going to react the same way we reacted 20 years ago. Come back now into your breath, your body, let yourself kind of settle a little bit. And see if there's any of these words here that relate to that or to modify it. And I'll go through these sentences, but if you've already got something in mind, just can put me on the background. Bring to mind what you might say to who, you might bring up their face. Imagine that you're sitting down, you've asked them to have a talk, and you're both pretty regulated. You're not doing this in the heat of an argument. And you say what it is you need to say to them, and notice how that feels for you. Does your breath change? Do you have some energy in your body? We don't see this the same way. Please respect my decision. You're pushing me to do something that's not good for me. And you might say something like, I want you to stop. Call before you stop by for a visit is a very specific behavior. This is what's healthy for me. We don't have to apologize or explain. You can say, this is what's going on for me. This is my boundary. This is what's healthy for me. I would like you to respect that. And this last one is more along the lines of regulating ourselves. This is something that we can ask the other person to do as well. When we have a disagreement, I'd like you to use a lower tone and take a break if you feel you're getting too heated. I will also say when I'm uncomfortable. This is really recognizing that when we're heated and when we're not regulated, when we're in a fight, flight, or freeze response, nothing good's going to happen by talking about boundaries at that time. So we might have to really work with developing that capacity to stay present and grounded. Let's work with this for a few minutes. What's coming up? What might you say? What does that feel like in your body? Notice if you're feeling fear, if your mind is going into worst case scenarios, see if you could bring it back. And visualize yourself being strong and certain and stable, saying what it is that you need to say. Take a break if you need to take a break. Remember, you're not doing this right now, you're doing a practice. So you can pause anytime, do a reset, do some cyclic sighing, stand up and shake it off. So, based on your past experience with them, how are they likely to respond and how are you likely to react? So, if you go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that's important to keep coming back into stability, to regulation. And this is not low risk. By setting boundaries with people, we're risking them getting angry, rejecting us, shaming themselves, or guilting us. Sometimes people will want revenge and they'll talk behind our back. Very common in families, they'll try to turn everybody against us or at the workplace. If they're not regulated, they might go into a fight response and yell at us that it's all our fault. If it's a long term relationship we have, they might bring up this list of everything we've ever done wrong. Well, who are you to tell me about that? Remember the time, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of reactions that other people might have. And on the other side of the coin here, we're also talking about if we betray ourselves or cave into pressure, we harm ourselves, we disappoint ourselves. So again, we're working with not shaming ourselves. Notice what's here. Keep coming back into your regulation. Breathe and visualize yourself setting the boundary. Visualize yourself staying stable, present. Keep coming back and being careful around shaming. Open your heart and have compassion. So sometimes we know that the boundary is going to cost us more than what we can afford. And then we could take care of ourselves by not calling ourselves a coward or that somehow we're deficient or not brave enough to set this. That's not really true. Sometimes we've just done a risk analysis and it's like, I would like to change this longer term and I will work towards that. But right now, that's not something that I can do. And that could be for many, many good reasons. Some of them have to do with us, like I can't afford to take on my boss because I need my job to feed my kids. Some of them might be more social. Family means a lot to me, and I can't afford to rock the boat right now. There's not one right answer to any of these questions. So, what do we do? Well, somatic mindfulness helps us to be aware when we need to set a boundary. So, we're not surprised by it as much. And we also have the capacity then to work with what are the elements here? What could I do? We could start by setting smaller boundaries, practicing with them or with other people. That helps to build that muscle and it helps to widen our window of tolerance for responses we might get when we set a boundary. We can come back to the first thing. We can't change other people. So we can change ourselves, but we can't fix other people or get them to change. When we learn more about boundaries, like in Nedra's really wonderful books, that helps us to understand the game and the whole field of what's going on. And we can build our own stronger nervous system. Let's take a couple minutes on this one too. We get to decide for ourselves. We're adults. We can decide if it's worth it. Is it worth it right now? What I might do. If it's intolerable, then I'm going to need to have to do something. That something might be a change in myself. It might be not being around that person as much. It might be all kinds of different things. But we get to decide. There really isn't a right or wrong way. So let's consider that again when you're thinking about this boundary that you want to set and that person and what are the risks. What are some smaller boundaries that you could set that would help a little right now if you can't take a big step right now? Or if you've got an inner critic going on, is there a way you could work with that and back that off? I'm going to really honor my own capacity right now. I'm not a coward. It's just I can't do the thing I want to do right now, and I'll work towards that. I don't need to shame myself for that. Notice your body, your breath. We'll have a couple more minutes here. So if you wanted to work back and have another round at setting that boundary in your mind, notice your response. See and feel yourself saying those words. Or maybe being tender with yourself. So much of the problem we have setting boundaries relates to our childhood and our relationships as an adult as well. Sometimes it just costs us too much. We're not in a relationship with a healthy person who can listen to what we're saying and respect us. We're in those relationships in all kinds of different ways. And we get to decide. Come back again, noticing that you're safe in this moment. You might use your eyes, look around, let your nervous system take that in visually. Right now, that person's not here. I'm not saying those words. I've been doing an inquiry and I might be a little agitated or feeling a little unsettled, but that's okay. I know how to come back. Take a breath. Let yourself settle again. There's a real benefit in looking into these things through inquiry so that we're ready when we're in the situation, that we can really see what it is that we want to do, what we can afford to do, and what's the right thing for us right now.